This episode is made possible by the generosity of our listeners. Thank you.
Welcome to the Creation Science
for Kids
show. You've heard there are dinosaurs in the Bible. They aren't the only extinct reptile we find there. Let's head to Isaiah to find some super exotic animals that used to live in the Middle East. Speculate about what fossils might match up with them. Then give some kudos to a VBS program on steroids. Hint, it's not Answers in Genesis. And contemplate the 3 laws of motion. Praise the Lord. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart, in the company of the upright, in the congregation. Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them. Full of splendor and majesty is his work, and his righteousness endures forever. He has caused his wondrous works to be remembered. The Lord is gracious and merciful. Psalm 111, verses 1 through 4. This is episode 62 of the podcast where we learn about Jesus, our Creator, and his amazing world. Hi, I'm Sherry Fields, your host, and I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Stephen.
Hi.
And Joseph.
Hello.
To follow along with what we're looking at, check out the show notes, creationscience4kids.com/flying serpent. So the other day, for some reason this came up, and I asked you, I think, Stephen, have you heard about the flying fiery serpents in the Bible? And you're like, no, tell me. It's like, okay, we'll do a podcast about it. I hadn't realized that it was only in 2 verses, both of them in Isaiah. Joseph, would you read Isaiah 14:29 for us, please?
Rejoice thou not, whole Palestina, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent.
Okay. Now, this is kind of scary because it's saying, don't get all excited, Palestine, because you've got the person who is putting their rod on you, that was conquering you and stuff, is broken, because the serpent's going to have a root that's going to have a cockatrice, is a venomous snake, and his fruit shall be
a fiery flying serpent.
See? It's right there in black and white. We'll look at what that is in just a minute. Then the other place is in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 6. The burden of the beasts of the south, into the land of trouble and anguish, from whence come the young and old lion, the viper and fiery flying serpent. They will carry their riches upon the shoulders of young asses, and their treasures upon the bunches of camels, to a people that shall not profit them. Okay, so it's comparing people here to animals, beasts of the south. And it's not a comfortable place, and there are lots of predators. Young and old lion, viper, which is
a snake.
Yeah, what kind of snake? How does it kill its prey?
It bites it.
Yeah, with
venom.
Venom, right. So a poisonous snake. And then the fiery flying serpent. And then it goes back to talking about people again. What is this? Why did the King James guys back in 1611 England, 400 years ago, living in England, translate this as fiery flying serpent? So I looked it up. It's a 3-word phrase to describe these animals. And the first word is seraph. Have you heard of seraph before?
No.
Okay. That immediately made me think of one of the angelic beings that serves God, the seraphim. I am at the end of a word in Hebrew just makes it plural, where there's more than 2. The seraphim are 6-winged creatures with odd faces that worship God. I looked up that it doesn't mean that there's some sort of angelic creature here. The word itself just means burning, on fire kind of thing, or causing pain. Then the second one is actually the word oof, which I thought was very funny. I say it when something is painfully heavy, but it actually means the opposite. It means to fly or hover in Hebrew. So there's no getting around that they were flying. And then it has the word seraph again. Hebrew doesn't have as many words as English. So instead of saying burning and serpent, it has a burning serpent, flying, burning serpent. And here's how we know it's a serpent. Because I told you, this phrase only happens in these 2 verses. If that was all we had of this word, we would have no clue besides saying, well, it's some kind of flying, burning thing. Maybe it's that ball lightning. That's so cool. But we know it's a serpent because that word seraph is used there when the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness. And remember, they had complained one last time, and God was so fed up with them. Instead of sending the plague and killing them, what did he send that would cause them to die? Do you remember?
I know. A serpent.
He sent serpents. They would bite people, and the people would die. And then he told Moses to do what so that people would stop dying?
To make a statue of a serpent, and anybody who looked at it would be healed.
Right. To make a serpent that was made out of bronze, put it on a pole, put it up high, and if people would look at it, they would not die of the poison. That's how we know what else would it be that would be biting them. It was the word for serpent. So nobody says it was any other kind of creature there in Moses' time. So when it says it's a burning serpent that flies here in Isaiah, we're kind of stuck. You can't explain it away. Okay, so then let's look. In Moses' day, were those serpents on fire?
No.
No, because they chose that word. What do you think it was like when they bit you?
A burning, firing pan.
Yeah. So in this case, we know it doesn't mean it has to be like the dragons in the fairy tales that breathe fire. That's actually, do you know which one in the Bible God says breathe fire? Leviathan, the water dragon. When he sneezed, sparks came out. That's where we have an actual animal recorded in the Bible that would have had flames coming out of its nostrils. This creature here in Isaiah could just be something venomous, that if it bit you, you would experience a burning pain. But since it's only in these 2 verses, and you can tell it doesn't tell you anything about them, it goes on to other things. It just puts them in the first one is cool because it's in the same category as a regular snake, a poisonous snake, and then the super crazy bad snake, which is the fiery flying serpent. So that leads us to, there are only a few places in the creation community that are speculating about what this could be, but it's kind of fun to guess. So if you had something that flies and is like a serpent, is there anything that we know from the fossil record that would make you think of like that?
Probably a pterodactyl.
Yeah, a pterodactyl is actually an excellent guess. Here, look at, it's actually a really kind of weird picture. I wasn't sure I wanted to show you. But at genesispark.com, it has a thought. The other place that the word seraph is used is for the seraphim, which are those 6-winged fiery beings. So somebody drew a picture where they've got a pterosaur on the left with its wings out, and then a seraph, the angelic creature, on the right, and showing how they could kind of look the same. Isn't that kind of odd?
Yeah.
So you are definitely not the first person to think of a pterosaur, pterodactyl kind of thing. One of the things that I have heard, and I didn't go looking for it, there are some people called cryptozoologists who are looking for animals that are not known to science now. Like the okapi, because it lives out in the jungle, was not recorded, and they hadn't even seen one alive until pretty recently, the last couple decades, because of where it lives. So there are people hoping that maybe there are still some pterosaurs alive, like in the mountains in the Andes, like in Peru. And the stories that people tell is that at night, instead of seeing fireflies, there'll be these huge winged things, way bigger than bats, that kind of glow a bit like fireflies. And you don't want one to bother you. And so there are people that go down there hoping that those are pterosaurs. I don't know. There isn't anything that they've been able to bring back. So it's could be something like the Yeti, Bigfoot, but it could be one of some of these kinds of animals that we know did exist, certainly in the fossil record, and probably existed for thousands of years after, that could still be alive. So we still have to just guess what God was telling us through Isaiah. But we've got a pretty decent guess, don't we?
Yeah.
Then this week has been crazy busy because you guys have been going to our church to participate in what?
Neighborhood Bible time.
Neighborhood Bible time, which is like VBS, except I tell people most VBS are kind of cute and feminine, and they've got craft time and sweet little songs. And Neighborhood Bible time is like boot camp. That's all guys, and they do all these crazy hoorah things. But it's a lot of fun, too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys especially did pretty well. And one of the things you brought home was a little card showing that we could go on the website to see what, Stephen?
Creation videos.
Yeah. So when I saw that, it's like, oh, wow, that looks cool. So when we had a chance, we looked it up, and you go to nbtime.org, and it's got a kids corner, and there you've got the creation links. And what kind of creation videos? Who had made it? Do you remember? Who was the guy that had the beard, and he was doing the main part where the Triceratops guy was? Do you know his name?
Mr. Maggie?
No, that was the guy who was helping you this week. But on the video, it was Buddy Davis. They had links to videos that Answers in Genesis has done. The first one for the younger kids was where they had the Triceratops mascot guy and this young silly guy who didn't wear his seatbelt. And then they had Buddy Davis. And then there was a funny regular evolutionary scientist who couldn't answer the questions when the reporter started learning the truth about what we actually find in the fossil record. So it was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What did you like best?
That dino.
The dinosaur guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty cool. Some of it was a little hard to follow, and at least on my laptop, the video was tiny. It was like only 3 inches wide, about 8-9 centimeters. So, but Joseph, you figured out that if you made the whole page resolution increase, the video got bigger and it still looked fine. Then they also had, for older kids, they had some talks that Mike Riddle had done for kids. And what was great, when he was doing it in front of a live audience and you wouldn't be able to hear the kids answer the questions, they would cut to where they had kids in front of a video camera giving their answers, and then it'd go back to the live presentation, which I thought was a good way of handling the terrible audio you get in a situation like that. Those were a bit longer, and because it was pretty much covering the same basic things, we didn't watch all the Mike Riddle, but the ones with Buddy Davis were pretty fun, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So I was pleased. It wasn't just short little samples, which is what it looked like at first. They had 5 videos and great links, all to Answers in Genesis. I don't know whether you can just watch those on Answers in Genesis or if Neighborhood Bible Time has a special link, but it's publicly available. So if you go over there or in the show notes, Creation Science, the number for kids.com/flying serpent, I will have a link to the Neighborhood Bible Time so you can go straight there pretty easily. It is just so wonderful to have people who are giving the gospel to kids all over the place, ones that would never normally come to church, and they get how important creation is, so much so that you got extra points if you went and watched these videos and let your leader know. So kudos to NBT and the work that they're doing to tell kids about creation and working with Answers in Genesis. All right, now it's time to hear from you. What do you have for us today, Joseph?
The laws of motion. Laws of motion were made by Sir Isaac Newton.
And do you remember that one video that you liked showed that he didn't come up with all those ideas all by himself? Do you remember who one of the other guys that had helped? There was Descartes and then
Galileo.
Right. And they were the first to say, wait a minute, what we've always observed may not be as straightforward as we thought. Because what have people always see? When you roll a ball, does the ball keep going forever?
No, it stops.
Right. So people assumed that
the ball would stop on its own.
Yeah, that the ball just wanted to stop. And what did Newton and these other guys figure out?
That the ball or anything that's in motion wants to stay in motion, but the force of friction on the ground and the wind and obstacles will stop it.
Right. So that's getting to the first law of motion, what's a short way of stating the first law of motion?
An object in motion wants to stay in motion, and objects that is stopped want to stay stopped.
Right. It wants to keep doing whatever it's doing. And what about the motion? Because like one of the confusing things, we watched one video, which was good, but it had where a ball was on a string, like the tether ball. Is that showing the normal first law of motion going on?
No.
Yeah, what would it be showing if it was following the first law of motion without something else? The ball would be going in what direction?
Straight.
In a straight line. That things want to keep going in a straight line.
It was going around and then it broke and then it went straight.
Yeah, the video did show that it moved so quickly it was hard to follow the ball. That once the string wasn't forcing it to move in a circle, that the ball went flying off in a straight line. Yeah, now we can talk more about what stops things from continually moving once they're moving. Because stopping, we can understand. If you put an object down on the table, unless something bumps it, it's not going anywhere. But the other one is a lot more complicated. Why do things stop then?
Because of friction.
Friction is where things are...
pushing against the ground or something.
Yeah. And what kinds of things are our most common sources of friction in our life? Why, when you throw a ball, doesn't it keep going even though it's not touching the ground?
Gravity.
Gravity is pulling it down, and what's slowing it down? Because at first, it's resisting gravity because you've thrown it hard enough.
Wind.
Yeah, and what's that? Wind is a way of describing air has friction. So what's one of the ways that we can experience almost frictionless surface?
Oh, yeah, on ice, it's really smooth.
Right.
So, there's not enough friction, so it'll keep going until it stops.
It will eventually, but it takes a lot longer. So that gives you an idea of what a frictionless surface would actually be like. Or if you step on a puddle in the kitchen, all of a sudden, instead of walking along smoothly, your foot slips way out because it's doing what it wanted to do the whole time without friction stopping it. Okay, so that's the first law. What's the second law of motion?
The acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the force acting on it and inversely proportional to its mass.
Okay, now I think in the video that we liked, it talked about the two balls. The girl had a beach ball and the boy
had a bowling ball.
Bowling ball. So that was talking about the second law. So which was easier to move?
The beach ball.
The beach ball, because it's stuffed with
air.
And the bowling ball has heavy stuff inside of it. And acceleration, do you remember when we were studying this? Acceleration, does that always mean to go faster, like when we talk about a car accelerating?
Mm-hmm. No, it just means to have a change in motion.
Change in speed. Yeah, right, because it can mean going around a corner, too.
Yeah, or stopping.
Or stopping. Right. So the amount of force that's needed to change the speed or direction of an object has to do with the amount of,
mass.
Yeah, force, and inversely proportional to its mass. So the heavier something is, the harder it is to move, is what that's saying. Yeah, to state things in a few words, you have to use big words. Yeah. That's why we went over this a couple times. And then what else? It shows it here we're looking at the book
Exploring the World of Physics by John Hudson Tyner.
Mm-hmm. And this is published by Master Books. One of the things that you get to know really quickly in physics is you've got to understand what in order to understand physics? What kind of a thing do we call that? Math. It uses algebra like crazy. Yeah. So a lot of this is stuff that we will not study until high school, but it still gives you the idea of how you set up a formula and then you can solve it. Okay? And the third law?
The third law of motion, to every action there is a equal and opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm. Which was saying like...
when a tire is moved and it's pushing backwards... Mm-hmm. The force of the ground pushes it forwards.
Right, so that's how we get, whether it's a bicycle or...
a car or a vehicle.
Right. Yeah, one of my favorite examples, what is this a picture of here?
A rocket ship.
Yeah, so when a rocket is going up, it points the rocket...
down.
pushing very hard down so it can move this enormously heavy thing straight up. And it's in the exact opposite direction. Have you heard about what it's like learning to shoot a large gun, like a rifle? What do they have to be careful of because they might not be expecting it that first time?
The blowback.
And what is blowback?
When the bullet fires, the gun will move backwards.
Right. So even though the bullet is very small, it's being sent out with such force that
the rifle gets pushed backwards.
Right, and it can be very dangerous because it's so powerful.
It can whack you in the face.
Yeah, so you got to be careful how you hold yourself and be prepared for it. Yeah, there was one video that we saw that we didn't choose because it was too long, but it had great graphics, and it showed this one guy on a bus. That was
I think that was the second law.
The first law. But that's the reason I was thinking of it is just like you might not be expecting the rifle to move you as it's shooting the bullet forward.
Yeah.
When you're on a bus and it starts to move.
You get pushed backwards.
Not exactly. Because when you're taking off, what was your body wanting to do, according to the first law?
Stay where it is.
Right. So it had a great graphic where it showed where the man's body wanted to be. His feet, because they were touching the floor, that the friction was strong enough to move his feet forward, but his head actually stayed in the exact same place, pulling his body backwards. So it was a good thing he was holding on, or he would have tipped over. And then the opposite thing happens when you stop. So yeah, if you don't understand the laws of motion, you could be in big trouble. Where's another place where kids tend to not know about the laws of motion? Which one has about the straight line? I think that was the first one again, like on the tetherball. Where do you experience the law of motion? Do you know that you might be surprised and it can make you fall and hurt yourself if you're not prepared?
Like skateboards?
At the swing.
Okay. Swing, yeah. What could happen if you didn't know what the swing was going to do?
You could fall off of it.
Yeah? Now, what about skateboards?
The skateboards, you could push yourself, and the skateboard could just shoot forwards. And then
Sure.
You could
Like
fall
on
over.
Yeah, same thing as the guy on the bus. Then I was also thinking of merry-go-rounds. My brother, when he was about 4, decided to just hop off a merry-go-round. And unfortunately for him, not only did he fall over, but he fell over with his lip on a rock. And we had to take him to the hospital for stitches. Because he was not expecting his body to do what it did, because it wanted to keep going and not even around in the circle in a straight line, being flung off that merry-go-round. And that's why the faster your merry-go-round is going, the harder it is to stay on it.
And I think I know the safest way to ride on a merry-go-round.
What's that?
In the middle, if there isn't anything pointing up,
Yes.
you can just ride in the side of the middle.
Right, that's my
and
favorite
you won't
spot.
fall off.
Do you know why? Are you actually...
Because the handles are all around you.
That's a good guess, but that's not what's going on. Can you figure it out, Joseph?
There's not enough spinning in the middle because so there's not enough inertia wanting to send you forwards.
Right, because you're not actually moving anywhere. You're just spinning in one place. Yeah, we saw the same thing opposite. It's where your body wants to keep moving on that video with Buddy Davis. Remember that young silly man? They were riding in the Jeep, and then the Jeep hit something, and the young man didn't have a seatbelt on. So he went and did a face plant right on the windshield. It looked really funny because his face was all squashed on the windshield. And then Buddy Davis gave him a cloth, not to wipe his face off because he had slobbered all over, but to clean off the windshield. And he said, that's why you wear your seatbelt, because your seatbelt helps you resist Newton's first law of motion. So next time you're in your car, you can say, this is my Newton's first law protector.
Cool.
What do you think? Was that a good name, or is seatbelt easier?
Seatbelt.
But that's what it's doing. It's helping us resist that continued forward motion when the car suddenly stops, or vice versa if you get hit.
Don't forget, you can find links to all the things we've talked about today by visiting the show notes page, creationscience4kids.com/flying serpent or /062 for episode 62.
While you're there, I'd like to ask for your help. If you know someone who might enjoy listening to this podcast and checking out my website, would you let them know for us? Every article I do, including today's show notes, has share buttons to make it super easy for you to pass on to your friends on Facebook or by email. You have amazing power to help your friends find the truth for themselves.
Plus, if you want to encourage us, leaving the show ratings on the Apple Podcast directory is a great way to do that and help families looking for new podcasts to find us. Thanks.
Are you on Facebook? We have a super secret clubhouse over there. We share photos and videos of cool things God has made, and behind the scenes info about what we're doing. You can even meet Squirt, our mascot.
What do you think is great?
He's super duper cute.
Well, that may be. If you go to my Facebook page and message me, I'll help you get plugged right in. Has this show been a blessing to your family? Running this podcast and ministry isn't free. Plus, it takes a lot of time. We now have a Patreon account where you can help us out. If just a few of our listeners help, even with just $1 a month, it will help cover the rest of our basic expenses, and anything above that will help us improve things for the future. Visit cs4ks.com to find out how you can get involved.
Do you like science? Got a subject you want to learn about? Or maybe you like telling stories?
Remember, it's super easy to turn your smartphone into a recorder, and if you send me a report, story, joke, or interesting idea, I might use it in a future show. Head over to cs4ks.com to find out what to do.
Well, this finishes up our show for today. Until next time, have fun treasuring our amazing universe and creator.
Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. Revelation 4:11.